Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming today for our presentation on the financial support that's available when we live with chronic illness. So as most of you know, I am Rose-elle, and I'm one of the work and income advocates here at MECFS Canterbury and the West Coast. Today's presentation, I'll introduce us to our work and income advocacy team, as well as provide a bit of an overview of some of the financial support that is available through work and income. I'll also talk us through how to apply for work and income support and just some general tips when we're working with them. So to begin, I'm going to talk a little bit about how MECFS can support you throughout the work and income process. So our work and income advocacy team was created to support people with MECFS and Long COVID, as well as their whānau, to access work and income support, provide clear information, guidance, and advocacy when needed. We do have a limited capacity as a small team, but please know that we'll always do our best to provide the best information, guidance, and support that's possible. This can look like helping you to understand what support you might be eligible for, supporting you to complete application forms and paperwork required, compiling your required documents or working with your GP. We can also help with navigating any challenges that arise with work and income. And if needed, we can advocate with or on your behalf directly with work and income, especially if there's any challenges that come up. Our support is available through text, email, phone calls, Zoom calls, and in some cases, in-person visits. If you need us to attend a work and income appointment, a GP appointment, or come to your home to help with some paperwork, that might be possible. We understand that applying for financial support is an incredibly stressful time, especially when you're already navigating your health challenges, and so getting some one-on-one support can be incredibly useful. To be referred to our work and income advocacy service, if you're already a member, you can email our office here with a brief note about what you need some support with. However, if you're not a member of MECFS Canterbury, you will need to fill in our online membership form and just tick the box that says work and income support. It can be really useful to provide us with some information about the urgency of your circumstances and what you'd like support with, so we can reach you in a more timely manner. So now that you've been briefly introduced to our work and income team, I'm going to chat about some of the financial support available through work and income. This won't be covering all of the support that's available, but I will cover the most common payments that we come across with our members. But before even applying for financial support or getting in touch with our work and income team, it can be incredibly useful to use this online eligibility tool that Work and Income provides. You can find it by Googling "check what you might get, Work and Income New Zealand," or by following the link that's on the screen here. I'm going to put us through a quick run through of using this tool so we can get more comfortable with it and what sort of things might arise from it. So the first thing it will ask you is how old you are. So I'm going to say that for this run through, we are 35. So we'll just put that back here and then press start. It will then ask us about our relationship status and our partner's age if we have one. It'll also ask us about our dependent children. And if you do have dependent children, it will ask a few more questions. So I've just put yes here, and then I've got one child. It'll also ask their age and whether or not our partner or ourselves are the parent of this child and how often they're in our care over a fortnight. It will also ask if we are already paying or intend to pay for an OSCAR program for our children, and whether or not they have a health condition or disability. The tool will then ask us about our study intentions, so if we're receiving a student allowance or loan, or if we intend on studying. That also includes high school, so if we intend on studying in high school or are already in high school, then you would press yes. It also asks us about our job and income. So the first question asks us to describe our work situation, and I've just put not in paid employment. It'll ask us the same for our partner and how much our partner earns before tax. So I've said that my partner works part-time and he earns $600 a week before tax. It'll also ask us about any extra money we get from anywhere else, and the total value of our cash assets. So a cash asset is things like any savings in our bank account, or items that are easily converted into cash. So maybe if you own a third vehicle or something like that. It doesn't include KiwiSaver unless you made a withdrawal from your KiwiSaver, then that would be included. So I've just put $4,000 here, and then it will also ask us about our non-cash assets. So that might be if you own a second property, so that's not easily converted into cash. Sorry, it's not loading. There we go. Those sorts of things. It'll also ask us about our accommodation situation. So I've said that we rent, but there's a few other options here. And we rented a private property for $500 a week. Next, it will ask us about our health and disability status. So here I've said I have a health condition or disability that will last longer than 2 years, which stops me working more than 15 hours per week. Now, if you weren't caring for someone full-time, who needs full-time medical care, if you weren't totally blind, or let's say you were able to work 17 hours per week, you would then have to select none of the above. It will then ask us if we have a health condition or disability that will last at least 6 months or a terminal illness, and the same for our partner. So I've said yes for us. Then just some quick demographic information to confirm your resident status and whether or not you're struggling to meet your basic living costs. Now, this tool will calculate what you are likely to qualify for from work and income, what you might qualify for, and what you do not qualify for. And then it will provide us with a bit of a breakdown. So as we can see, it's saying we are eligible for the supported living payment, accommodation supplement, community services card, disability allowance, family tax credit, and so forth. You'll notice it also has these other strangely called support options, like the International Culinary Studio, LinkedIn Learning. Those are all training opportunities or study pathways to help you get back into the workforce, which work and income can offer you. And then if you scroll down, it will also break down what you might qualify for and what you're not going to qualify for. So that is the eligibility tool, which can be incredibly useful to send the work and income advocacy team your results, so we can sort of speedline the process and have a look into what payments it says you're eligible for. So now let's talk a little bit about the main benefits. So I won't be covering all of them, just the supported living payment and the Jobseeker Support, as those are the two main benefits we come across for our members. With main benefits, it's important to note that you can only receive one main benefit at a time. So the first I'm going to be discussing is the supported living payment. So this payment is a weekly payment to support those who are both permanently and severely restricted in their ability to work due to a health condition, injury, or disability. To be eligible, you must be at least 16 years old and a New Zealand citizen or permanent resident. So that means even if you were in high school and you're 16 years old, you can still receive this payment. The good thing about the supported living payment is that you can study while receiving it, which is really quite good. Now, as I said, you need to be permanently restricted in your ability to work. And what that means to work and income is that your health condition is expected to continue for at least the next 2 years. You also need to be severely restricted. And what that means is that due to your health, you cannot regularly work 15 hours or more per week. You'll also need a medical practitioner, nurse practitioner, or a psychologist to confirm your condition and its impact on your ability to work. And I'll talk about that in the next slide a little bit more. Now, the supported living payment is dependent on your income, so your eligibility and the amount that you'll get changes depending on how much money you earn. So if you earned up to $160 a week, the amount you receive on the supported living payment wouldn't be impacted. But if you were to earn between $160 and $250 in income weekly, your benefit would be reduced by 30 cents for every $1 over. And then if you received over $250 a week, your benefit will be reduced by 70 cents for every $1 you go over. If you earned an amount of income that reduced your benefit to $0, you would not be eligible. And that breakdown of income can be a bit confusing to calculate. Trust me, I do need to break out the calculator sometimes. But luckily, Work and Income do provide an income deduction tables. If you follow this link or just Google search supported living payment income deduction table, it will show you a table breaking down how much you can earn and how much it will impact your benefit. So as I mentioned, you need a medical professional to confirm that you are both severely and permanently restricted in your ability to work. So your medical professional will fill in something called a work capacity medical certificate, in which they need to cover a brief description of your symptoms and their impact on your work capacity. They need to confirm that you cannot work 15 hours or more per week. They also need to confirm that your health condition is expected to continue for at least 2 years. Our Work and Income Advocacy team have put together a guidance sheet for general practitioners, which explains the supported living payment eligibility and what they need to be putting on a medical certificate for our members to successfully receive this payment. So you can access this on our website or by following the link here. It's a really useful resource and really helps our medical professionals to understand the payment just that little bit more. You can also receive the supported living payment if you are providing full care for someone at home who has a serious health condition, injury, or disability. To receive this, you need to be 18 years or older without dependent children, or if you do have a dependent child, you need to be at least 20 years old. The person that you provide full-time care for can be your child, it can be a family member but not your partner, and it can be someone from your community. The person that you are caring for must otherwise need hospital level, rest home, or residential care. And if your nurse practitioner, medical practitioner, or a general practitioner needs to provide you with a medical certificate that states that without your care, that person would need to be in a facility such as a hospital or a rest home. Now, the Jobseeker Support is the second main benefit I'll be talking about today. So this is a temporary benefit. It lasts for up to 26 weeks for people who are looking for or training for work, or they're unable to work due to a health condition, injury, or disability. If you need Jobseeker Support for longer than 26 weeks, you will need to reapply at that 26-week mark. To be eligible, you need to be 18 years or older, or if you have dependent children, you need to be 20 years or older. Now, that might sound a bit strange, but it's because if someone was 18 years old with a child, they would be eligible for a different payment. You also need to not be in full-time work and one of the following. You need to be available for and actively seeking full-time work, or have a temporary exemption from work obligations. So that means, let's say you became incredibly unwell for a period of time, or you had an injury and you needed 8 months off work, then you could look into getting the Jobseeker Support. You also need to be, or you could be limited in your ability to work due to a health condition or disability, or you might be in work but losing income because you've had to reduce your hours. So let's say you're working full time, but you took a turn in your health and now you've had to reduce to part-time or casual hours. The job seeker support can act as a bit of a top up on your income. Again, the job seeker support is income tested like the supported living payment. So you can earn up to $160 gross per week. So gross means before tax, before your benefit is impacted. So you can see the breakdown here. It's a little bit similar to the supported living payment, except for general clients. So that's those who aren't a sole parent. Your benefit is reduced by 70 cents for every $1 you earn over that $160. Again, work and income have these income deduction tables where you can have a look at how much you can earn before it impacts your benefit too much. Now, as I said, the job seeker support is only available for up to 26 weeks before you have to reapply. To reapply for the job seeker support, a notification will appear in your MyMSD. If you don't know what MyMSD is, that's okay because we'll talk about it in a few slides. So you'll need to log into your MyMSD and complete the online reapplication form, which basically just asks you to confirm your circumstances and to let them know if anything has changed. MyMSD, once you submit that, MyMSD will let you know if you need to provide any more information. And then once you've completed all of that, you'll receive a letter confirming whether or not you have been re-granted the job seeker support. So as I said, one of the pathways to receive job seeker support is due to a health condition impacting your ability to work. So this is quite different to the supported living payment as there are different medical criteria to receive job seeker support. So to receive job seeker support with a medical deferral, you must be, again, unable or limited in your ability to work full-time due to your health, or you're already working but you cannot continue or you need to reduce your hours. You also need to provide a medical certificate from a health practitioner to work and income to receive this payment. And on that medical certificate needs to be a diagnosis, how the condition affects your ability to work, so confirming whether or not you can work 15 hours or more per week, the expected duration of time that you need off, and how often your condition needs to be reviewed. So the main difference between job seeker support and the supported living payment is that with job seeker, your health condition, disability, or injury is considered temporary. So there's still that expectation that you will return to work at some point in the future. You also need to provide regular medical certificates to stay on the job seeker support. So typically work and income will ask you to provide a new medical certificate with this information every 3 months, but your GP can recommend that you get reviewed every 6 months instead. Now, although the supported living payment is for those with long-term or permanent health conditions, a lot of the time work and income can initially put you on the job seeker support with medical deferral first until they're certain that your work capacity won't fluctuate or improve. And this tends to be more common with conditions like MECFS, which, as we know, are still incredibly under-researched and not well understood. However, if you are put on the job seeker support and you believe that the supported living payment best reflects your circumstances, I really encourage you to get in touch with our work and income advocacy team and we can discuss your individual circumstances. You can also request a formal review of decision, which I will talk about in some later slides about how to do that to challenge work and income's decisions. So now that I've talked about those two main benefits, I will spend some time talking about some additional supplementary payments that you can get. So you can get these alongside a main benefit and you can receive multiple of them. And you can also receive most of these without having a main benefit. So the first is the disability allowance. So this is a weekly payment to help with regular and ongoing costs due to a disability or health condition. It's reviewed every 12 months, so once yearly, you'll have to review each of the costs that you claim for under this amount. And you can earn a maximum of $80.35 per week. To receive the disability allowance, you must meet the income test here on the slide. These are a bit different to the main benefit income test. These are just one solid figure. If you earn over that figure, you will not be eligible. You also have to have a health condition or disability that's expected to last at least 6 months. You need to have ongoing costs that are related to a health condition or disability and are not fully covered elsewhere. So you can't have health insurance supporting you with that cost and also claim it on the disability allowance. You also have to have evidence of the costs that you want to claim for, so things like receipts, quotes, or invoices. You need to be a New Zealand citizen or a permanent resident. So some of the common ongoing costs that are covered under the disability allowance include medical and health appointments, so seeing your general practitioner, going to a counsellor, physiotherapist, chiropractor, and so forth. It can also be used to support you with medication costs, so that might be prescription fees or unsubsidized medications, supplements, vitamins, or minerals. It can also be used for external home help, so you can receive the disability allowance for things like gardening, lawn care, or external window cleaning. The disability allowance cannot be used for internal home help, so things like meal prep, cleaning, those sorts of things. That's because Work and Income believe that indoor home help is the responsibility of the Ministry of Health, so Te Whatu Ora, rather than the Ministry of Social Development. It can also be used, which this isn't something that often people know about, it can be used towards your utilities, so your heating, your gas, and your power. This is especially common for our members that have temperature intolerances or sensitivities, or they find that they're more often homebound, so they use more power. It can also be used for transport, so ambulance fees or subscriptions, taxis to appointments, other public transport. It can also be used for your private motor vehicle to attend appointments, and medical alert fees. And there are a few other costs as well, such as special foods, for example. If you were a diabetic, you would have to buy things that are lower in sugar, which might cost more, so you can claim for those costs. Things like gym and pool fees, equipment hire, and consumables. So an example of a consumable is like purchasing batteries for your hearing aid. So to apply to have these costs covered under the disability allowance, you will need to gather evidence of those costs by, having receipts, quotes, or invoices. For example, if you wanted to claim your power costs under the disability allowance, you would need to provide Work and Income with your last 12 months of power bills, so they can calculate whether or not you use quite a lot more power than the average person without your health condition. If you were to pay someone to do your lawns, then they would need a quote or an invoice stating how frequently you get your lawns done and how much it costs. You will also need your GP to fill in a disability allowance medical certificate. So this disability allowance medical certificate confirms that your health condition or disability is likely to continue for more than 6 months, that you require ongoing supervision or treatment by a health practitioner, that the costs you are claiming for are a direct result of your health and are ongoing, so they can't be one-off or a cost that's only going to last you a month. It needs to be continuously purchased or paid for. And that the goods or services are of therapeutic value to you and are needed for your health. There are some additional things that your general practitioner will need to provide Work and Income if you are claiming for unsubsidized medication, vitamins, supplements, or minerals. So alongside a disability allowance certificate, your GP will also need to write another letter to Work and Income for these unsubsidized medications to confirm that no suitable subsidized alternatives exist, and that the non-subsidized item is essential for you and has therapeutic value. And this could just be a couple of sentences confirming that for work and income. To have counselling included in your disability allowance, the counselling must be required and directly related to your disability or health condition. And to have that covered, you'll need to complete an additional counselling form, which you fill in alongside your GP and counsellor. Yeah, and for more information, you can always visit the Work and Income website or get in touch with our Work and Income advocacy team. The Child Disability Allowance is a non-taxable allowance paid to the main caregiver of a child with a health condition or disability who needs extra care. So this payment is quite different to others. It's not income or asset tested, so it doesn't matter how much money you earn or how much savings you have. If you have a child who has a disability or health condition, you can receive this payment. So to be eligible, your child must have a physical, sensory, psychiatric or intellectual disability or health condition. They must also need constant care and attention because of that disability. So in the eyes of Work and Income, constant care and attention means that that child needs regular supervision so they do not harm themselves, or they need frequent attention for their bodily functions, or they need substantially more attention and supervision that is normally required by a child of the same age. That child will also be needing your care for at least 12 months to be eligible. When that child turns 16, they might be able to receive the supported living payment instead of the child disability allowance. Typically, you need to provide Work and Income with a medical certificate that confirms that this child needs constant care and attention and confirms their diagnosis. But there are a few pathways that you can go down instead of providing a medical certificate, such as if the child attends a specialist school or a special daycare centre, or a special unit for children with intellectual disabilities in a mainstream school. So those are just some extra pathways if you were unable to provide a medical certificate. Now, the accommodation supplement is a weekly payment that can provide support towards your rent, board, or mortgage payments. To be eligible for this supplement, you need to meet a cash asset test. So as I discussed earlier, cash assets are things like savings in your bank account or assets that can be easily converted into cash. You also need to meet an income test, and I've got those figures on the next slide. You also need to have accommodation costs. You can't be mortgage-free and receive an accommodation supplement. And again, 16 years or older and be a New Zealand citizen or resident. You cannot get this payment if you live in a kāinga order home or you pay board to someone who lives in a kāinga order home, so that's social housing. And if you're not living in the home you're paying accommodation costs for. For example, let's say you own two properties and one of them is mortgage-free and the other you still have a mortgage for, but you're renting out. If you don't live in that home, you can't receive the accommodation supplement for that home. You also need to prove your accommodation costs. So that could be submitting Work and Income, a tenancy agreement, a letter from the person you board with stating how much you pay, and also proof of your mortgage repayments. So these are the income limits for the accommodation supplement for Canterbury and the West Coast. As you can tell, the Canterbury limits are a bit higher, and that's because typically those who live in Canterbury will pay higher accommodation costs than those on the West Coast. So I'll just give you a few seconds to look over those before I move on. Now, the temporary additional support is another weekly payment that you can get if you don't have enough money to cover your essential living costs. So essential living costs are things like your health costs, rent, power, food, petrol, car repayments, those sorts of things. So to be eligible, you need to be 16 or older. You need to complete the temporary additional support application form. Again, you need to meet a cash asset. These are quite a bit lower than other payments, and that's because if you had a large amount of savings, Work and Income would expect that you used your savings to cover your essential living costs rather than apply for the temporary additional support. You also need to have essential living costs that you have no other way of paying for. You also need to show that there's no surplus in your income. So if you completed a budget with all of your essential living costs, then you need to have no income left over from that budget or be living in the negatives to be eligible for this kind of support. You also need to take all reasonable or necessary steps to either get other financial assistance or resources. So what that means is if you had cash assets, Work and Income would expect that you convert your assets into cash before accessing the support if you were able to, and also reduce your costs. So if they found that you had a few costs on there that weren't essential, they would expect that you remove those costs before receiving the support. You also need to be a New Zealand citizen or a permanent resident. This is a temporary payment. It can be paid for up to 13 weeks. However, you can reapply if you need it for longer than 13 weeks. So now that I've covered the main benefits and some of the supplements that exist, I will be discussing some of the one-off payments you can receive. So these are grants that can support you with emergency or essential one-off costs. These can be applied for more than once, but there are limits. For example, a single person who is applying for food grants can only get up to $200 every 26 weeks, unless exceptional circumstances existed. So the special needs grant is a one-off payment to help meet those immediate, essential, or emergency needs. It can be recoverable or non-recoverable. So if it's recoverable, it means that you need to pay that money back to Work and Income. So when you get this grant, they will put money on a debt owing to Work and Income, and you can organise with them how much you pay it back each week. So typically, this could be $5 a week comes off your benefit, or if you're working, because you don't need to be a beneficiary to receive this, it would be $5 from your paycheck each week to pay it off. To be eligible, as I said, you don't need to be on a benefit. You need to meet income and asset tests, which will be on the next slide. And you must have an essential or emergency need, as you can see on the side here. You also need to not be able to meet the need from your own resources or other help. And you need to meet any hardship obligations that have been applied to you. So what this means is sometimes Work and Income will ask you to do something like a budgeting course if they find that you are applying for quite a few hardship grants or receiving the temporary additional support. They might ask that you attend a budgeting course, and you would typically need to have done that before you can get a special needs grant. So these are the income limits and the cash asset limits. If you want to look over them, I do want to note that if you are applying for a food grant, you cannot have any cash assets. Now, the Recoverable Assistance payment is another one-off payment, but it's more of an interest-free loan for non-beneficiaries, so those who don't receive a main benefit, to meet essential needs. To be eligible, you must meet the income and asset test on the side here. You must have an essential and immediate need, so that might be you need a car seat, you need to travel to attend a funeral, school uniforms, so forth. You also need to agree on how you'll be repaying work and income before they approve it. And they will typically ask if you have checked other ways to get assistance. So if there's other organisations who might be able to provide you with that support before you go to work and income. Now, this is a quick overview of the financial support available from Work and Income, which MECFS Canterbury have put together. So it's a very brief look into each of the payments that are available. And as you can see, some of these I haven't talked about today, such as the young parent payment or the youth payment, childcare assistance. This can be found on our website to download on the MECFS Canterbury and the West Coast website. You can also find it by following this link below. It's a really useful resource to refer to, especially if you're working alongside our team and I mentioned something like the supported living payment and you can quickly go, oh, yep, it's this one, I remember that one. For our students out there who are studying while living with a chronic illness, there is something called a limited full-time status available. So this grants people who are unwell with a full student allowance, even if they are enrolled as a part-time student. Unfortunately, only certain academic courses can accommodate these kinds of students. Not all courses can be part-time. And StudyLink will consider the equivalent full-time student rating of the course. So what that means is if the course was only a part-time course anyway, and you studied a part-time course part-time, then StudyLink will probably not give you the status. And there's an expectation that you will study more than half of a full-time course, but that can always be discussed with StudyLink. For more information on this payment, you can talk to your disability advisor at your education provider or StudyLink. You can also talk to our Work and Income Advocacy team. So now that I've covered the supplements, the main benefits, and some one-off payments, I'm going to briefly go over how to apply for work and income support. So your first step is to get your 9-digit client number. So this is a number that Work and Income use to identify you. It can be found on the front of a community services card or the back of a Super Gold card. It can also be located on any Work and Income letters or StudyLink letters. But there's no need to worry if you can't find a client number or you don't have one, because Work and Income have an online form you can fill in to request one. You'll need to provide them with some basic demographic information. And then once you fill in those details, Work and Income will be in touch by email or text within a few working days. To find this form, you can just Google search request a client number, Work and Income, or follow this link below. You will then need to create a MyMSD account. Now, MyMSD is Work and Income's online portal. On this, you can use MyMSD to apply for financial assistance. You can schedule or manage your appointments with Work and Income. You can declare any changes to your circumstances. Like I said, a lot of benefits are dependent on your income. So if your income changes one week, you can declare this on MyMSD without having to call Work and Income. Work and Income will also send you letters through your MyMSD to communicate with you. And you also can check on your debt or any upcoming payments. So to register for MyMSD, you can Google search register for MyMSD New Zealand or follow this link. It'll ask you a few basic questions to fill in. Remember to have your 9-digit client number. And then once you've set it up, you can log in and begin applying for financial support. When you log in, you'll come across this button that says apply. If you click there, it will take you to an application, which takes about 30 to 60 minutes, if not more, to complete. But the fortunate thing is that you can save the application wherever you are and exit it. You just need to come back and complete it within 20 days, or it might delete, and we would hate for that to happen. For that application, you're going to need information like your income details, your bank account number, your inland revenue information, and so forth. So once you've submitted your application, Work and Income will provide you a list of next steps, which you'll need to complete within 20 working days. This will pop up on your MyMSD automatically, but you might need to log out and log back in for it to load. This could be things like submitting evidence of your costs, like your tenancy agreement or a board letter. They'll likely ask for proof of your bank account and your IID number. They may ask for your medical certificates if you're applying for the Jobseeker with medical deferral or the supported living payment. They might also ask for your disability allowance certificate. Once you've finished your application and the next steps, Work and Income will work out what you're entitled to and they'll be in touch with you. Typically, if you're a new client, you will be asked to attend an initial face-to-face appointment, which can be quite intimidating for anyone. So here's what to expect at your first appointment. So what to bring? You should bring a New Zealand issued ID, like your driver's license, birth certificate, firearms license, and so forth. If you're born overseas, you need to bring proof of your identity as well as your right to live in New Zealand. And this is optional, but it can be really useful to bring along a copy of your medical certificate and disability certificate because you can refer to them during the appointment if needed. Now, when you arrive to Work and Income, there will be security at the front door. You'll just need to typically let them know your name and the time of your appointment, and they will open the front doors for you. You'll then make your way up to the front desk receptionist. You'll let her know your name or him, let them know your name and the time of your appointment. You'll then take a seat in their waiting room and a case manager will come and get you when they are ready. During the interview, the case manager will confirm your ID and your application information. They'll discuss your work capacity, your health, and your circumstances. They'll explain what benefits and payments you're eligible for and your obligations if you are to receive them. And they'll answer questions you have and outline any next steps you need to take. So my general tips for your first Work and Income appointment is to bring a support person if it's possible. It's always great to have an extra set of eyes and some support during these meetings. I also recommend you prepare your story in advance. You need to be ready to discuss your health and work situation, which isn't always easy to do. I also recommend you ask questions about your obligations. Even when you're filling in applications online, write down some questions to ask at your first appointment. You might also want to ask when your payments will start or if you need to provide them with anything else. I would also recommend you let them know your preferred way of communicating due to your health. So this might be your preferred way is through email. Work and Income might not always be able to accommodate that, as typically they operate through phone calls or appointments, but it's always good to note. And if you run into any issues, which does happen, please get in touch with our Work and Income advocacy team. If you find that you can't quite understand something or Work and Income's declined something, any kind of issue, please get in touch with us and we can support you. As I mentioned earlier, if you disagree with the decision that Work and Income has made, you can write a formal review of decision within 90 days of them making that decision. So we can support you to request this, but you can also just Google search Work and Income request review of decision, and it will come up with a form that you'll fill in. So my last section of my presentation is just some general tips when you're working with Work and Income. So my first is to communicate with Work and Income by email. So as we know, people with ME often have difficulties communicating on the phone, and Work and Income can be communicated with by email. So to email them, you would compose the address to msd.defservices@msd.govt.nz. In the subject bar, you'll need to put your full name and your client number. And in the beginning of the email, you need to include your full name, client number, date of birth, and your current address so they can identify you. Then just let them know that you prefer email due to your chronic illness, such as I have the chronic illness MECFS, and this impacts my cognitive abilities. I find talking and responding to questions on the phone very difficult. I prefer communication by email. And then state what you want to know or why you need to contact them. However, due to work and income employing a lot of people across the country, there is going to be some variability with your interactions across different case managers and different sites. Sometimes work and income will respond to your emails through the deaf services, and other times they will just recommend that you phone the 0800 number instead. Now, if this happens and if they turn you down, I recommend either being in touch with our work and income advocacy team or having an agent act on your behalf. So you can choose an agent to deal with work and income on your behalf. That can be a friend, a family member, or a professional, and you get to decide what they can help with. You can have an agent for a single meeting, maybe it's your initial appointment, or if you're called into work and income, even a meeting on a phone call. You can verbally ask to have a support person there who can speak on your behalf. And that verbal agreement will just last for that meeting. However, if you wanted an agent for longer, you would need to please select that agent with care. This person will be able to act on your behalf with work and income, so it's really important that you trust them. You can still act on your behalf to work and income when you're able to. It doesn't mean that this person has full right to your information. You'll also need to fill in an appointment of agent form. So you can find that on this link or Google search appointment of agent work and income. And on that form, it will ask for your agent's information as well as ask you questions about what that agent can help you with. So that could be, you could say that that agent can support you with signing forms, or maybe they have a right to all interactions with work and income. You get to decide what they can do on your behalf. Your agent will also have to go into a work and income office typically and provide them with their New Zealand given form of identification, so a driver's license or a birth certificate, firearms license, or so forth. So for more information in terms of work and income, there is the work and income website. There is also this MSD policies website, which is incredibly extensive and comprehensive, but it outlines all of the policies that work and income case managers work from when making decisions about people gaining benefits. You can also access our work and income information on the MECFS Canterbury website and access our work and income advocacy team. If you do live outside of our service region, so if you live outside of Canterbury and the West Coast, you can Google search for your local benefit advisory service for some support. So that is the end of my presentation.